Okay, Angela V. Rachel and John, who are in Afterlife, a Night to the Boardroom book. At one point, John thinks about having a baby with Rachel and thinks something like, now is not the time, but it seemed like something he planned for the future. It also seems like something that would be good for Rachel. In subsequent books, there's no mention of that. Is that something that you ever might address again? Angela, I don't know. They haven't come back to it. Usually the characters tell me where they want to go on these things. Rachel was in her 40s, and she'd lost a son, and I don't know. I could see them adopting a child, maybe, or her, getting involved in like the local children's homes or children's charities or something like that. But I don't really know. If even though John did have that thought about now is not the time, implying that there might be a time in the future that maybe that might not be something that would happen for them. I know these days it's more common for women to have children in their 40s, like actual biological children, but it's still hard. Not only the age the person is at, but physically and like that. So I don't know, but if they decide to do it, they'll let me know, and then I'll let you guys know. They just haven't made a decision yet. And I know that sounds weird, but that's really the way it works. Sometimes it's just I wait for them to tell me. Let's see. I can give you a hint, though, that there is... I did get a hint recently that someone that we weren't sure would have a baby might be having a baby in a future book. So I'll have to see if that comes out the way I think it will. But how's that for a very vague, cryptic teaser? Yeah, you can just reach the screen and slap me. Okay. All right. Kimberly B. When writing in the children, does the muse ever foreshadow their future? Since we know Nina was pregnant in 1954, I'd love to see some interaction with Elisa's twins from Vampire Instinct, perhaps at the next council gathering. Sometimes they do. Like, well, obviously, when I wrote the freebie novella, Season of Giving, that was a glimpse into the future of Elisa and Jacob and Mason and Jessica's children, Cain and Farida and John, Ingram's grandson, kind of in their early 20s, kind of gave us a hint of what kind of people they were going to be. I have recently gotten some more input from the muse on Elisa's twins, so that I actually now have them in my head as to who they are grown up and who they might be paired up with. In terms of characters, both of them. Let's see, the son is probably going to be with Catriona, Keldwin's ward from the Fae world, and Ruth, the daughter. Who did we put? I'll have to look that up. I'm not sure, but the muse has already been figuring out who they're going to be with. So this is good. So you will get more about those children in the future. And so as a result, now as far as Nina and Alistair's child, I don't know. Now the muse hasn't given me much on that child yet, so I don't really know who that child's going to be, or what as that child will cross with these other kids. But I cannot imagine that if we do get to the point we can write about these kids adult, that they would not be crossing paths, because they're a small group, in terms of born vampires, and so they do tend to cross paths quite often. Let's see, but in terms of just going back to that, the Elisa and Malachi's son, Catriona, he comes to Atlanta, to the Club Atlantis there, and that's where he meets Catriona the first time and gets kind of enchanted with her. It'll be interesting to see how Keldwin reacts to that. I can see him getting upset, like, he's a vampire, you're a fae, and he's like, well, you're with a vampire. It's like, that's not the point. Yeah, okay, so Melissa S., with all the vampire couples getting together, what happens in 300 years when it's the servant's time to die? Can they be changed? Some of them are very submissive, and vampires are dominant creatures, so how does that work? It's a good point, and it doesn't. As far as, it's kind of like, if you imagine Alanna from taken by a vampire. Alanna could never be. She would never have any desire to be a vampire, and it would be something that Evan and Niall would never even think to ask of her, or because in the vampire world you do have to be very dominant in personality, in order to survive, and she would just, when her time came, she would pass, and they would meet up again in the afterlife. So, but others like Jacob's pretty much a given that Elisa would turn him. If she basically, unless it was like a point where she herself was ready to die, that she just, okay, I've lived 8 million years, I'm ready to go, let's go, that type of thing. He would, because he's been a vampire before, so it's okay. But I could see that happening. But like, it just really does depend on the couple. But if the servant is a true submissive, like Alanna, no, I would see that they would just, or like even Thomas and Jacob and Lisa. If Thomas had been able to live to his full extent at 300 years, she would have let him go. She wouldn't have even crossed her mind to make him a vampire, because it has to be a certain personality type. And then, of course, they also right now have to be approved by the council to turn, and they're not going to approve every servant to turn. So, not that every vampire is going to listen. If they're told they can't do it, they might say, well, screw it, I'm doing it anyway. Anyway, okay. Hold on a second. Go lay down. Go lay down. He's getting impatient. He says, it's time to play with me. Anyway, let's see. All right, so Vanessa C. When do third mark servants sleep? They watch after their vampires during the day and manage the household, and they have to serve their vampires when they are awake. Vanessa, that's a very good point, and very good of you to notice that. AKA, why did she have to notice that? I have put in inferences that a third mark servant, does need a lot less sleep than a human does. So 2 or 3 hours, 3 or 4 hours, they're good to go. So that does help them quite a bit. And, they can catch cat naps and things like that when necessary. And then, of course, after these erotic interludes with the vampires, they usually get some sleeping time then. So yeah, they don't get a whole lot of sleep, honestly. And it's probably broken up like a couple hours, right after dawn, and then a couple hours later. So, yeah, they don't get a lot of sleep. Jackie A. Joey, will we ever learn more about Dovia? That's from Vampire Soul. I forgot how much I loved her presence in it. She reminds me a little of Danny from Vampire's Claim when starting out. You're correct. I'm sure we will. You'll hear me say this kind of thing quite often. I start to sound repetitious, but really when it comes to side characters who have made a strong impact on us in the books, and pretty much all the characters you guys have mentioned as side characters where you're asking, hey, will we see more of these characters? They've made an impact on me too, and I really enjoyed writing them and spending time with them. So that, I never know when they might show back up. A lot of times, every once in a while, I will be able to say, yes, they're going to show up here, blah, 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 because I can already see it. But sometimes it's not till I'm actually writing the story that it happens, and suddenly they're there, and it's like, oh, this is a perfect moment for them to, run into Dovia and see how she's doing. And I still don't know how to say her name. It's like I can see it in paper more than I can say it, but I thought Dovia. I was thinking dove when I thought of the name, like for a bird, but Dovia is kind of doesn't really roll off the tongue, but Dovia kind of does. Dovia might work. Okay, anyway, I have to work on that one. But yeah, I'm sure we'll see her again in the future with Kai and Rand and all of them. And you also asked that you once mentioned a vampire, the Australian hostess Lady Elwyn, who held a party where a slave was bound naked on a silver horse with her hands dipped in black paint. Who is this incredible hostess, and why have we never been to one of her parties, and can we go? We sure can. I think we should. I want to say she was mentioned in Vampire's Embrace. I think she's one of the region masters. She might have been the one that Luigi ended up staying with. The one up in not Queensland, because Alistair's Queensland. I have to look at North South Wales. She might be no. She's not a regent. He's an overlord, I think. or I'll have to look back at it again. But I think she actually is. I think I mentioned her. I'll have to look that up. Thank you. I should have looked at that before this, but double check again yourself when if you have Vampire's Embrace. I think she's in there. She's one of the overlords or region masters. We don't spend any direct time with her in that book, but she's still around, and I will keep in mind about that party. That might be fun to do a vignette sometime where some of our vampires are going up to a party at Lady Elwyn. We unfold of what happens when they're there. Okay. Let's see. All right. And finally, when will we see more of Evan, Alanna, and Niall? They're my favorites out of all your series. I won't repeat what, you just heard me say what I say about that kind of thing, so I won't repeat that for you again, so it won't put you to sleep. But I will say that, of course, Taken by a Vampire was just re-released as a self-published book, so I had the absolute pleasure of rereading that book to check it for formatting, correct any errors from previous printing, things like that. And I really loved reading. I'm very fond of that story. It's an interesting world right now. It's very hard for us sometimes. Personality like Elisa, who gave her life totally to serve us, and that all she ever wanted was to serve a vampire. And then her love story with Evan and Niall, and how that evolved into her understanding a sense of expectation of their love, that her devotion did not have to be totally one-sided. I really love the story. I love her character. I love the strength of her character, because we don't really celebrate that kind of strength anymore, where its strength is based in servitude versus, an overt aggressive independence. And both have value. I hate to see a loss of understanding of the value of, this commitment to servitude. And of course, that may just be the submissive side of me that feels, has that desire to see that not lost. But yeah, I love that book. I do love that book, and I love Evan and Niall, because they were kind of different vampire. Evan was a different kind of vampire with, being an artist, and of course we got to cross paths because he had Marcus from Rough Canvas as his broker and all that good stuff. So I don't know when we'll see him again, but I'm sure we will. Ina, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Again, I'm so used to reading names on Facebook and things like that, I may mispronounce, and I apologize. Is there a certain age for a female vampire to become fertile, or male vampire are always fertile? One of my favorite couples is Danny and Devlin. I can't wait for them to have an offspring. Apparently there is no certain age, because Elisa, she got pregnant back during the Crusades once and miscarried. And then she didn't have Cain until she was over 1,000 years old. And then there was Elisa and Malachi, who, got together, and both of them, he was a young vampire in the terms of the vampire world, and, yet she got pregnant right off the bat. So it's, and she was his human servant. So it really varies. It's like how Lord Brian has been trying to understand the patterns and of how, because fertility is such a big issue for vampires, because born vampires are really, slowly dwindling in numbers. Figuring out the patterns and what motivates a vampire to be born is very critical to him and to the vampire world. And there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of pattern to it, except what he has identified, that in a lot of times, but there are still exceptions. We know there are exceptions where, one has become pregnant, a vampire who they have a totally functional relationship. There is no excessive emotion between them. But that there does seem to be a proclivity for vampires and servants with over, an inappropriate level of emotional bonding to get pregnant. So that's the only real indication or clue we have at this, as far as fertility for vampires. So no, there's no predicting the age. Let's see, then Jatoya P. What's your least favorite thing when it comes to writing besides the editing? Oh, that's going to be the business, the publishing. Oh, writing itself is wonderful. But if you, maybe you're wanting me to stick specifically to the writing, because obviously the business of publishing is, I just want to, be like it is in the movies and TV series, that I sit up in my cupola of a beach house staring at the ocean, writing my beautiful books and sending them out to the world via email to my agent or publisher, and they put them out there and millions are bought, and I rake in the royalties to pay for the new roof to my beach house after the third hurricane comes through. And I'm just, that's all it is. I don't have to worry about marketing them, worry about anything. All that's just taken care of. I just become a multi-million-dollar famous author by doing nothing but sitting up there writing the books. Yeah, that happens in a million years. And that's for someone who apparently in a former life did something so amazingly incredible that they have earned that miracle of their current life. But other than the business of writing, which is always the business of publishing and stuff, which is always kind of drag because it's got so many ups and downs and unpredictability and just all sorts of things. For the writing itself, it's the time. Finding the time is very kind of it's the hardest part of writing, because every bit of time writing is spent steal it away from something else. And as a writer, if you're wanting to do it right and get out the number of books you need to get out, that time is being taken away from family. It's taken other leisure pursuits like reading, the stuff that got you into writing to begin with. Time with friendships, things like that. You make those decisions and sacrifices. You have a supportive family, because if you don't, you're not going to do it, because you have to have a supportive family. But even so, even with a family, you're especially, I'm 50 now, and I'm becoming very aware of how fast time flies, and those moments that you get to spend with those you love passes. And even though I love writing dearly, I mean, it's what makes me me. Without it, I lose my sanity. What little of it I have, anyway. So it's almost like a form of therapy to me, even more than anything, before, above and beyond, before the other reasons I do it, is still knowing, dividing the time to find it and do it right is probably one of the most difficult about writing, because I don't want to do it half-assed. I want to give my whole passion to it, but I also want to care about my family, take care of other things too, and have life experiences that can go into the writing. So that's always a juggling act. All right. Are there situations as it relates to BDSM and kink that you will not write about? If it doesn't grab me erotically, I won't write it. If it's not a moral thing, a lot of times it just didn't grab me. It has to arouse me for it to go in. Because if it doesn't arouse me, I can't imagine how I can write it to make it exciting to you or emotionally engaging. Because to me, the emotional goes right hand in hand with the titillation. It has physical arousal is connected to the emotional. If it doesn't do anything for me, then it's going to be hard for me to, even fantasy. And when I mean that, does it do anything for me? I don't mean it doesn't have to do something for me in life, but on the page it has to do something. It has to still engage. It's like I was talking about the pony play earlier. It's not my kink in real life, but writing about it did absorb me. But what was my toughest character to write to date? Oh, that's so easy. That is Dante of Mermaid's Rant. He was my characters open up to me as the story progresses. They kind of just sort of unfold. And Dante just would not. He just said, no, forget it. And usually by like the second edit round, I'm where I need to be emotionally with my characters and my relationships and that kind of thing. I got to like the darn third edit round, and he was still being like a clam. It just could not pry him open. And eventually I had to get to him through Lex. It was just, I figured out a way to have her, the way she reached out to him, experiences she initiated with him, helped open him up so that I could get into them, if that makes sense. And I know it probably doesn't, but it was definitely sort of, I had to go an alternate route to get into his head that I had never had experience with. But he was also one of the most difficult characters I had ever had, in terms of, basically he grew up in a world where he didn't even know what the words compassion and mercy meant. All of that was foreign to him. His life was about survival. If you survive, it was okay to do it. You know, all it meant, that was the only moral compass he had. And that was a very hard character to write in terms of to make him asympathetic and yet realistic. Because I have a real pet peeve with things where they introduce a character that's been through so many horrible things, but then, oh, and just one chance meeting and, you know, one little turning point, and then he's all soft and squishy and wonderful. No, that isn't the way it works. You know, it takes a lot of time to get over these things and to get, you know, to understand life a different way. So anyway, so he was my hardest character. And that was from the Daughters of Ariane series, the 3rd book, Mermaid's Ransom. Selena W. Will you consider writing a vignette about how Nina and Alistair find out about the pregnancy or how they raise their child? I'd love to do that because it's so fun that, you know, in Vampire's Claim is when we met them as secondary characters, and that was the relationship had already been resolved and she was pregnant. And then, of course, Vampire's Embrace, the latest book, went back into time as to how they met and everything. And of course, by the end of that, they had just gotten together. We didn't know about their pregnancy then because that's not going to happen for a while longer. But I would really like to do that at some point. So I'll add that to the vignette list. Let's see. Did you make a conscious decision to cross over your characters and series, or did the muse guide you? No, I never make a conscious decision about these things. They just happen. And I say, okay. The muse says, you're going to do this. This is going to happen. These characters are going to come over here, and this character is going to come over here, and you're going to write a story about them together. Okay, bye. So no, I don't. Like even the crossover novella I'm writing now, The Problem with Witches, which is going to include the Knights of the Boardroom and the Arcane Shot series of characters. That just kind of came, you know, some ideas that had been thrown out by different people, and, you know, then my own thoughts on it and stuff, and just kind of came together. So, so I guess you could say, yes, the muse guides me on it, and the spark happens, and I'm happy to do it. Kath P. How much notice do you take of your fans' requests for stories? Do you need the muse to bring it to you, or can you choose to write something? Sort of kind of relates to that last question. Yes and no. Yes, I pay attention. I'm one of those people who believes when you say something, you've thrown it out to the universe. It's out there now. Now you know, if somebody in China comes up with like, hey, let's have a you know what would be really cool, blah, 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 blah. And then 5 years later, all of a sudden in Hawaii, somebody comes up with this great story idea for a book or a movie that's exactly that. I think it's because they spoke it aloud and put it out there in the mass collective subconscious. So I am sure there have been times fans have suggested things. I don't have to wonder about it. I know that we have certain examples of it in my books where a fan said something. Mistress of Redemption was entirely because a fan came to me and said, I know Jonathan is a bad guy, but I would really love to see you write a story where he gets redeemed. And I thought, hell no. Not going to do that. He's terrible. He's an awful person. Who would want to read about him? And sure enough, the muse said, oh, wait. No, she's got a point. Let's write that story. No, we're not right. Yes, you're writing because I'm the muse. And, you know, you're my bitch. You're going to write that story. Go write that story. So it got written. And I still love that story. It's never going to be one of my most popular books because it was more of an erotica love story than a romance love story, but I am proud of it. But anyway, yes, so I do pay attention to what the fans think. And there have been times that the fans' ideas have sparked ideas with the muse. It does have to come. I really wish, you know, when someone says, oh, I just really, really, really want you to write this story. I really, really do. And it needs to be this and this and this. I'd love to be able to do that, but I can't. It's the muse has to drive it. And sometimes what the fan and the reader is suggesting does hit the spark. And I'm able to take something from that and create a story of it. But it almost always is it's usually not the exact vision they had. It's more like an element of what they suggested because it really does evolve in its own way as the story develops. But it has to be muse driven. I have like 1 or 2 books I have tried to write according to something my editor or publisher thought was a really great idea because of current trend. And it is like pulling teeth. It really is. And I was able to go a different way with it that they found acceptable, and then I could write it because then it worked for me. And it made me feel that I was still giving my best effort and I was producing a story my reader would enjoy and that I could be proud of. But it was still very hard to write. And that was Naughty Bits and Naughty Wishes, for those who are wondering what I'm thinking of, is because they wanted to write it in serial version, and it was not a format I enjoyed, and it was hard, and it just never felt quite natural. And like I said, I love the books, and I like the books okay, and they're good stories of the characters. They were hard to write because I was forcing them. Sharon E. So many authors who write exceptionally successful series continue those series way beyond what should be apparent to readers. Continue those series way beyond what should be the apparent end of those series. How do you keep your longer series, like the Vampire Queen series, so consistently and vibrantly original? Well, first, thank you. Wonderful comment. I appreciate that, Sharon, because it is one of my worst fears is writing formulaic writing and, feeling like I'm just churning out the same old crap. So knowing that writing is staying fresh and original, and that I'm treating each set of characters and story as a story and something that engages my passions as well as yours. That is my goal. That is my important thing when I'm writing a story. And I guess that in a way is the answer. That's how I do it, is because if I start writing it and I feel like I'm just churning out, I'm just recreating a story I already wrote, or then number one, I'd fall asleep. I would get so freaking bored. I would just, and I have done before where I have been writing scenes where I feel like I'm slogging through mud, and I realize I'm not writing this the right way. Because if I'm feeling like I'm on a factory assembly line writing this scene, then I'm doing something wrong. There has got to be something. I have to step back and see what's not working here. Why am I not connecting with these characters? Story. And I step back and I look. So I thank you for that. And going with that, and Kath P's question about how much notice I take of requests for stories. I take a notice not only of requests for stories, how you guys react to my writing, the things you say, the enthusiasm you have for them. All those things they help with this process. I'm in there writing it. I know that I do not want to be the author that you $5 on your book, and even more are spending hours of your reading, only discover that I have churned out a piece of crap, like, or I've done a copycat book from 3 books back and things like that. That's not something I'd be proud to put my and or feel good about sharing with you. So I'm very conscious of it, and I think that consciousness of it. Okay, Michelle B. I guess I would like to know how you learned so much about the BDSM world. Everything I know I've learned from books. I don't know anyone personally that is in the lifestyle to even ask questions. Well, I mentioned earlier about my understanding of the psychology came from my orientation. I started learning more of the mechanics, and when I did get my hands on a few books, and from those books, wonderful world, the internet came, because when I started writing BDSM, there was no internet. But when it came along, that obviously gave me a lot of insights into, okay, what local groups are, online forums, things like that, where I could research more mechanics of, and then also have the chance to go to meetings and things like that, and interact with people from all kind of walks of the lifestyle, and see, how they manifest their desire for dominance. And then, of course, many of those things, like things I saw and experienced, went into the books, obviously not exact copycat type situations, in terms of but more inspired things that help inspire my character directions and things like that. So that was pretty much how, and you can do that even now. I mean, at Life, or even when you look at, you can look up for BDSM group area, and there's usually different listings. Find out the ones that are more reputable, or the ones, like that lunches where you kind of meet public, friendly arena, and to socialize first and find out more about the group like that. So that would be, you know, a lot of the ways to do it. But it's at its heart, dominance and about the psychology. That's the power of it, and that started in my own heart. But I don't think it has to start that way. I don't think that it's necessary to be submissive or dominant to write wonderful BDSM romance. All you have to do is have an understanding and tap into that side of yourself, because even if you're not an actively dominant or submissive orientation, we all have an understanding of the emotions inside of us. And it's just a matter of tapping into ourselves to it in order to write it. Let's see. Okay, last question from Donna S. Knowing that third marks heal from pretty much anything, if a vampire decided to mark a virgin, would her hymen repair? Same for turning a vampire who was a virgin. I recall a statement that with their healing abilities, vampires pierced their ears anew every time they wore earrings. So, ... Oh, Donna, why would you ask me such a question that I really don't want to answer? This is another one of those questions like, okay, why do y'all think so much about these books? Because, you know, now I have to come up with an answer that makes sense. And honestly, I've just never even thought about this. Yeah, technically the hymen would repair, but let's say it doesn't. Because let's not do that to our poor female vampire characters, or Sherman characters. I think sometimes when you write fantasy paranormal, it helps if you're not a hugely scientific person, as I am not. I am so non-scientific, it's probably makes my science readers just shake their heads. But there's a lot of things in vampires in terms of, like, you know, you think of things humans do, like the way we shed our skin, our hair, and, you know, like vampire hair growth. I mean, why does vampire hair growth stop? Why wouldn't they just be constantly growing hair all the time? You know, and you know, in terms of on their heads, why would, you know, everybody not have 6 foot long hair, you know, that has to be cut every day? So there are things like that that we just kind of gloss over that and just say, yes, they'll, you know, basically heal from, you know, having, you know, a 6 foot inch deep stab wound, but, you know, their hair stops at the shoulder and looks really nice all the time. Or their hymen, you know, only gets broken once. So, and they, you know, that type of thing. So my guess is it's a suspended disbelief thing. We just don't think too much about it, that it just works that way. But I thought the earring thing was kind of cool, so I kept the earring thing in. Another thing about magic and paranormal, sometimes you can just pick or choose. Anyway, you guys come up with some great questions, and I hope this has been fun for you guys to hear some of the answers, and I hope I have answered them suitably. If I haven't, you just let me know. Of course, you can leave a comment here on this video. Let me know how you like it. If you did really enjoy this and you're not already subscribed to me, go ahead and subscribe. I only put out one of these about once every month or two, so it's not like you're going to be inundated with notices about my videos, but then you'll know when I put out a new one. And of course, Facebook, got a members, and these questions came from my Joey W. Hill members only fan group that you can join. They have a lot of fun out there. And anyhow, I've got that. I'm on Twitter, on my website, storywitch.com. There's a contact email link. So if there's a question that caused another question, just shoot me a note. I'm always open to answering questions all the time on video. But thank you so much for spending time with me, and talk to you guys later.